President Trump looking for a very busy second week, already making sweeping changes and issuing hundreds of executive orders after he was sworn in as the 47th president last Monday. One of the biggest issues, of course, cabinet confirmations. As we look ahead to the coming week, we are expecting a number of cabinet choices to have their confirmation hearings. And for more on this, I do want to bring in political analyst Henry Olsen. Henry, good morning to you, and thank you for taking the time to join us on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me on.
So I do want to get to looking ahead to this coming week. We are expecting some of President Trump's cabinet selections to have their confirmation hearings. We know that RFK Jr. as Health Secretary, Kash Patel as CIA Director, they are scheduled to have their hearings this week. So far, we don't know about Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. But what are you keeping a very close eye on? There was a close call with Pete Hegseth. He ultimately was confirmed, voted in as Secretary of Defense. Are you expecting any contentious hearings this coming week?
I think Gabbard's is going to be, if not contentious, revealing and potentially outcome determinative. What McConnell's no vote signifies is that he is going to take a continuation of the 1980s to 2010 era Republican consensus in defense policy very seriously. I'd be shocked if he were a yes on Tulsi Gabbard. So that means if that's right, she's already lost the 3 votes that the Republicans can afford to lose, because she's not going to get Murkowski and Collins, and only one more vote would sink that. And I think we'll find out whether there's going to be that one more vote after the hearing. RFK Jr., I think, is in a better position because he is actually well known. You take a look at public polls and people know who he is. He's got nationally high name ID, and it's roughly split 50-50. There are Democrats and independents who like RFK Jr. That means somebody like a John Fetterman, who wants to play I can play with both sides, would actually have an incentive to say yes to RFK. And that might balance off if a pro-life Republican who is persuaded by the heavy campaign that pro-life forces are waging against RFK decided to go on the other side. So those are the 2 things I'm really looking at coming up this week.
So I also want to ask you about this because we have been hearing a lot of conversation about tariffs. President Trump saying that he is going to consider tariffs against Canada and Mexico 25% as early as February 1st. And we are now just days away from that happening. This is understandably a political strategy. He wants both of the countries to step up, to take more action when it comes to illegal immigration and stemming the flow of illegal drugs. What is he looking to do politically as he makes this statement, sending that very strong signal?
Well, I think what he wants is he wants to see action from both of them. It would not surprise me if he either pushed that back a little bit, or if maybe he levied a 5% tariff on either of them or both of them, to say that, there will be more coming if you don't do more to control your borders with us. Of the 2, it certainly seems that Mexico is quietly being more helpful than Canada. Probably is not good for Canadian relations for Trump to be musing about annexing it or making it the 51st state. Canadians are very good friends of America, but they're very proud of their independence and their own history, and that doesn't make them more likely to want to help the United States on the things the United States cares about. So I think what he's trying to do is send a signal. He's trying to provide encouragement. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if on February 1st, maybe he levies a 5% tariff against Mexico, but a 10% tariff against Canada, saying Canada hasn't done enough, and hold that final 15 or 20% back and if you don't approve, this is where we're going.
And speaking of immigration, this continues to dominate the headlines. President Trump, in the first few hours, issuing executive orders. He worked to ban birthright citizenship last week. A Seattle federal judge temporarily blocked that. When it comes to what President Trump can do, if the federal judge temporarily blocks that, what is the legal recourse that President Trump can do as he looks to enact his agenda?
Yeah, this is one of the most aggressive things that the president is doing. Is that what he's saying is that I have the ability to interpret the Constitution by myself and present a authoritative interpretation for the purposes of the executive branch. And I think that is on dubious legal grounds, whether or not the 14th Amendment was incorrectly interpreted back in the 19th century when the Supreme Court did make the ruling that has since allowed for birthright citizenship. I think, in practical terms, what this means is it's going to go up to the courts. It's going to be appealed. It's going to eventually get to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to decide what the 14th Amendment's clause about citizenship, people being born in and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, are citizens. I think they're going to decide whether their 1890s era case was correctly decided. And that'll come down probably sometime in 2026 or early 2027, unless there's an expedited appeal schedule that goes all the way up through the appellate court system.
Already, it's been a very busy first week for President Trump. As we look ahead to this coming week, in the coming months, politically, what are you keeping a very close eye on? Because President Trump, as he promised, is coming in full force, not wasting any time in acting his agenda.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I'm looking at. First of all, there are elements of Trump's agenda that divide the Republican coalition, and so far he has not moved forward on those. Tariffs, one of them, is that there's many Republicans who support his tariff moves. There's many people in his coalition that are vehemently opposed to it. He has not acted on that with respect to China, to much surprise. Then you have something that I don't expect in the next week, but I do expect at some point in March he's going to have to move on, and that's the budget. There's Republicans who want dramatic cutbacks. There's Republicans who want dramatic increases in defense spending. There's Republicans everywhere in between. Should we try and do something new in a federal program to help the working class? These are divisive issues in the coalition, and he doesn't have to address them until his budget, but he will have to address them in his budget and in his tax cuts. And that's something that I'm looking at. Where does he come down on the issues that will divide his coalition? So far, his executive orders largely operate in the realm of issues that unite his coalition. And in that sense, it's very shrewd politically to do that.
And let's also talk about TikTok, because TikTok was temporarily halted last week, and President Trump then issued this delay in enacting it, saying that they would find a way for there to be, a U.S. buyer. As you take a look at that, because, of course, there's also not just the strategy, but also the relationship with China, as we look at it in terms of the geopolitical dynamics, what do you make of that as we look ahead to whether a deal can be made?
Well, I think what he is signaling, both in that and with his stated desire to visit China and with his holding off on tariffs, increased tariffs or expanded tariffs on China, is he's signaling to President Xi, that he wants a deal. He's not signaling where he wants that deal to go, and that's typically a Trumpian move, is to signal the direction and the contours of what he wants to talk about. He's not really done that yet. But what he's signaling is he doesn't want to preemptively ratchet up the heat of the Chinese-American relationship. And so it'll be interesting to see what President Xi does, is because I think in Trump's mind, he's done a lot of things that he or didn't do a lot of things he could have done. How is she going to reciprocate if we get through February and she has basically done nothing to indicate a willingness to engage with the president? I would expect to see a ratcheting up of tariffs or some other thing that would ratchet up tension, because that's the typical Trump playbook. But right now he's signaling to China, let's talk and see if we can deal with our differences before we start building walls between us.
A very busy first week for President Trump. No doubt another busy week to come. Henry, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Well, I always appreciate coming on. Thank you very much.